Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Butterflies love flowers, and today we will be planting some in our butterfly garden. Also, sometimes birds can be a nuisance. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Joellen Dimond. Joellen is the Director of Landscape at the University of Memphis, and Mr. D will be joining me later. All right, Joellen. This is your butterfly garden,
the
right?
butterfly garden.
Yeah.
And look what a thug we have in the aster, the fragrant aster, the aromatic aster.
It likes it, right?
This is a raised bed. It's got loose soil, so it is being, trying to take over.
Sure.
So we got to keep it under control.
Okay.
So we'll dig some of it out and have room. And one thing I want to notice that, the butterfly bushes come back every year. The sedum has come back every year, our oregano has come back every year, and we have kept our parsley because look, this year some of it's going to seed. So that keeps generating the same plants that the caterpillars and the butterflies can eat, and get nectar from. But first thing we need to do is get rid of the excess aromatic aster in here.
That it is. So I will start doing so.
This aster has very long tubers that come out and roots and sections of rhizomes that come out, and then they just say, oh, there's the soil surface, and then they come out and they just keep multiplying and multiplying. And sometimes you don't get all of this root, so it will start coming back again. You just got to keep up with it to keep it under control. You're going to come across some roots, some rocks.
Those rocks?
I'm trying to move the rocks.
There it goes. Thought I got it. There it is.
All right, well, we've got it mostly contained.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you, we've had to take out some of the soil, so we need to put some soil back.
Okay.
Right, looks good. Now we're ready to plant. Before we do that, let's put a little fertilizer down. We'll keep away from that. It doesn't need any fertilizer.
No, it does not.
But the rest of the stuff could probably use a little bit, and what we plant new will need a little bit. Okay. And it's like I said, it doesn't take a lot of fertilizer. We have some large echinacea that we have a perfect spot for now.
Yeah.
We'll place our monarda here. And we have 2 cone flowers. We can space them back here. I know you can't always see them from the front, but they will look nice back here. And we have some pentas left over that we will plant in the front here next to where we're going to put the butterfly bush back.
So will the pentas attract butterflies?
Pentas will attract butterflies.
Okay.
And bees.
Okay, so all your
and
pollinators?
Other pollinators.
Good.
Now the echinacea and the rudbeckia are especially attractive to butterflies because they are flat and the butterflies have a better place to land and collect nectar. And even hummingbirds will like the monarda and the pentas, but butterflies like those also.
Good deal.
Reds, oranges, yellows, the bright colors attract butterflies more than some of the other colors.
Okay.
So let's put this nice landing spot for them to take care.
Give them a place to hang out, right?
Give them a little place to hang out, some minerals.
Just a little tanning, right?
Yeah, might need to mix up our sand a little bit here and because you want it to retain water, because that's how they get the minerals out of it. We'll set it here.
Okay.
And we'll take our rocks, place them around.
Oh, look at that. It's just like a puzzle. Pretty good.
So they'll have a nice place to land, sun themselves, and then get a drink of water. A good place to get some minerals out of the sand and to sun themselves on the rocks. And they'll probably, now that this is not wood and we've gone to these cinder blocks, they'll probably sit on the edge of this also.
Oh.
They like to sun themselves. And I guess we're ready to plant. Yeah, these are fairly large. We'll move this one out of the way. So we can plant this one first. And you see it, again, these are large containers. You can cape a hold of them, but you squeeze the pot around all sides so that it gently comes out of the container. And we look at the root system, and this is very nicely rooted. Not a whole lot of things to move out of the way. Again, get rid of some of the circling roots so that the roots will go away from the plant. And we will plant this perennial no higher than the top of this root, the soil in this container. You don't want to bury the crown of the plant. So we'll dig a nice hole for this. The topsoil in those bags were slightly different from the topsoil that is decomposed in the ground, so we can mix them together and everybody will be happy.
Just a little mixing.
Yeah, you want to measure the container with your shovel and see how deep it is, and see if you're.
Hey.
That's pretty good.
Hey. I'm learning.
Now we can set this in here.
Hey, look at that, folks.
And we'll put some of the soil back around it and up to it, but not over it.
And we get it off these rocks right here.
Now we've got one planted, and then we'll plant the next one, same way.
Same way. Yeah, you're right about that. Nice.
And again, we've got some nice roots, a little bit of circling. We'll just take that out, make so it'll go straight. And we will set it down.
All right, look good to you?
Okay, yeah, looks good.
Yeah.
Now we'll plant these two rudbeckia. They'll bring some nice yellow to the garden. And again, we want to take that out. And we just squeeze the container. And oh, look, that's a lot of circling roots. So we'll fix that. I would prefer to cut these. I don't have a sharp knife. Let's see if this will work on it. Yep, it will. I'd prefer to do this with all these circling roots, because what will happen once I do this, these roots, as you can see here, are going to start coming out towards me and away from the plant center, and it will stop all of this circling.
Wow.
Again, it'll keep coming out, and it'll stop all that circling, and it'll grow away from the plant like it was trying to do in the first place before the container stopped it. Again, we'll plant it no deeper than the soil level that we have here. And we'll dig a hole, incorporate some of the existing soil with what we put on top. Plant it at the soil level depth, but no higher. And now we have this monarda. Monarda is a butterfly and hummingbird magnet. Pinks and reds. This one is raspberry, so it'll be one in the red
raspberry.
family, so it's going to be really pretty over here. Again, we're going to move the soil out of the way, incorporate some of the existing soil with what we put on top, nice and loose. That's why this butterfly garden has done so well. It's got some real dirt in it and some amendment, and it's just really drains well, and the plants like that.
All right, so this is
Gonna
going to
be
be
deep in
interesting
it.
because if you look here,
Oh my. Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to have the same problem.
so we'll see.
We might have to do a little diggling to get the roots off the bottom of that.
There it goes. Ah,
Oh, it's not as bad as I
not that
thought.
bad.
No,
Not that bad.
that is not too bad. In fact, this one I wouldn't cut this. I would just simply just move out the roots because it seems to be only at the base of it that it has a problem. So I would just cut those a little bit with our fingers, just pull them out. I'm going to break that so that goes both ways. So it'll go away from the center of the plant. There we go.
And I'll tell you something else I like to do too, Joellen.
Mhm.
I always like to look and make sure you don't have any
Weeds on it.
Weeds
Oh
in
my
there.
goodness, that's a good idea.
weeds going in there.
Very good idea, because that happens a lot.
Happens a lot.
You know, nurseries can't get everything because the wind carries a lot of plants a lot of places. Again, we put the soil back up around it, but not quite over the top, but close to it. And then we have a couple of these pentas. These were root bound too, so we had to move the roots away from them. Didn't take much to do that.
So it's nice and loose.
And we do have some extra vinca that are annuals, and the pentas are annuals. We'll put those in just for some extra color, because the more color you have, the more attractive it'll be for something flying by. And we can always replace the annuals, but the core perennials will be here. And this guy that's taken over, this aromatic aster, it will bloom the last of all of these plants. So we'll have a succession of blooms throughout the season.
All right. Well, Joellen, thank you much. Can't wait to see what it looks like later this season.
You're welcome.
I have a favorite weed, folks, and this is it. This is hairy bittercress. Produces a rosette of leaves first on the soil surface, and then up comes the rest of the plant. This plant has a small white flower, and it also produces a pod. And inside of the pod are seeds. So if you brush up against this weed, the seed pod explodes and it actually throws seed 10 feet. Pretty impressive, huh? Again, this is my favorite weed, hairy bittercress. All right, Mr. D, let's talk about songbirds as pests.
Yeah, that's
They
kind
can
of
be pests.
and that's kind of bad that sometimes they're pests because we try to attract them. We have bird feeders but they can be a pest, especially when you are growing fruit. And blueberries, especially, they will completely wipe out your blueberry planting. Okay. So what I try to do is plant enough for me and the birds, and try to beat them to it. You know, I try to beat them to it. But there are things that will give you some relief. The best thing and the only thing that I know of that is pretty much 100% effective is exclusion using bird netting. If you have small enough plants, 2 or 3 plants that you can put posts around and completely cover it with bird netting, a real thin netting, then that will work. And you may have one, even then you may have one that somehow gets in there every once in a while, but exclusion is the only thing that I know of that will completely work. And one thing you can't do, you can't kill them, you can't shoot them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Songbirds are protected by
They're
law.
protected,
And
okay.
so the 12-year-old with a 20-gauge shotgun, BB gun, forget it. You can't.
Don't work.
You can't shoot songbirds. There are other birds that you can that are not classified as songbirds. Some of the blackbirds, cowbirds are considered pests, and they're not considered songbirds even though they sing. But some, you need to check local regulations where that's concerned. But exclusion is by far the best way to keep them out if you can if you don't have a very, very large planting. Then you need to go with, you can use sounds, frightening devices. There are propane cannons that you hook up to a propane tank, and every so often it'll build up pressure, and then it will make a loud noise, exploding noise. Owls, the plastic owls, you can put them around. Mylar tape, that flashes in the sunlight, you can hang that around in different places. Anytime with all of those, you have to change it from time to time.
Yeah.
A radio blaring, especially with country music, we'll chase them. We'll do a pretty good job of chasing them off, and you can switch channels.
Right.
But you've got to, put a radio in I have a radio in like an outdoor patio storage box to keep it dry, and it's pretty effective. Because the voices change, and you go from the DJ to the music and all that, and so it's not something that it lasts pretty good because it's not something they can get used to as easily.
Yeah, plastic snakes.
Any kind of predator. If you can find a plastic red-tailed hawk that you can set up on a tree, but then the owl, move them around.
Sure.
Because if they see it sitting there all the time, they go, "Right, he's not going to bother me." But those are all things that you to be successful, you've got to be persistent, and you've got to use a lot of different things, diverse, and then you're going to have some damage. Be prepared to tolerate a little bit of damage.
Now, what about when they start building nests? How do you go about dealing with them then?
The only time that I see nests as a problem is if they stop up your gutters and things like that. Now, I have seen swallows. They'll build a mud nest up around your light fixtures in your garage and your carport. That's where the snakes really come in handy. If where the nest is, close to where the nest is, if you will put a good lifelike looking rubber snake, or a live snake for that instance, up there, that will, I think they will think twice about doing that again. And I actually have wrapped a snake around the light fixture that swallows kept building their nest in, and they didn't do that anymore. Of course, you have neighbors that, friends that come in, they almost have a heart attack when they look up there and see the snake up there. But it keeps the birds out.
Right.
But that's probably the best thing for a nest. Wherever a nest, that's a stationary location, and you put something there that scares the bird. That should do the trick.
Do they any structural damage that you know of that they may do or cause?
Woodpeckers can damage your if you have a wooden western cedar house or a wooden house. They can get out there and they can peck holes in it. And most of the time, what they're doing is a mating ritual.
Right.
And but same thing, owl or
some you can move around.
Yeah,
right.
something makes some noise because they're relatively shy. Woodpeckers are shy, but a radio or something like that can.
You like that radio deal?
I like the radio deal. I've got to give
with the country music.
Yeah. My Dave Keaty gave me that idea when he was successful at keeping raccoons from eating his sweet corn with a radio in his garden. Then Dave, thank you for that idea because I use it all the time. Oh yeah, I guess I'm a music fan.
He's a music fan. Before we wrap it up, Mary, is there anything that you want to add about songbirds, or do you know much about them?
Sure. Yeah. The only thing I would add is if you're gonna discourage the nesting, do it right when you first start seeing them nest before they start laying eggs, things like that. And it's just like Dee was saying about the against the law to kill the birds. You can't really remove those nests either once they have eggs and young in them. So get your fake predators out there early.
So it has to be done early.
Yeah, they are protected. Just remember that.
So yeah, you can't shoot them. So we definitely want to bring that up again.
That's right.
All right, we appreciate that information, Mr. D.
Good deal.
The basil that was planted here is looking a little sad. Well, after we planted it, it got down into the 30s, and basil is pretty sensitive to temperatures, and so that might have been just a little bit cold for a new plant that maybe came out of a greenhouse. So it's not looking too good. What we're going to do is put some slow-release fertilizer on it, and if that doesn't work, then we may have to put some iron on it also because it's a little chlorotic too. I just want to talk a little bit about this slow-release fertilizer. These little small pills are actually called prills, and they are time sensitive to temperature. And on here you'll notice it'll last 3 to 4 months at an average temperature of 70 degrees. Of course, the temperature fluctuates lower than that and higher than that, so it may not last the whole 3 to 4 months based on the temperature. But the fertilizer is actually inside each of one of these, and the temperature releases it in the ground for the plants to feed. And that's why it lasts so long. In a few months, you can see the prills, they'll still be in there. They'll be empty and they won't have any fertilizer in them.
All right, Joellen, here's our Q&A segment. You ready?
Ready.
All right, these are some great questions. Here's our first via email. After I take off the small branches growing on the trunk of my oak tree, they just come back. What can I do to stop the small branches from growing on the trunk of my oak tree from coming back again? And this is Alejandro on YouTube. So how about that? So they're growing on the trunk of the
side
tree.
of the tree. And that happens a lot. It's called epicormic growth. And you just cut them off,
Right, just cut
like
them off.
he's doing. I don't know of anything that you can do to stop them, but I wish we had a picture.
Right.
Because I'd like to know how old the tree is within the size of the tree he's talking about that has this epicormic growth on it that keeps coming back. And I'd like to see what the condition the rest of the tree is in, because sometimes that epicormic growth is a result of some kind of stress on the top of the tree. And so I just would like to know a little bit more about what the tree looks like. But epicormic growth you cannot stop. The tree is going to do that.
Right.
And so you just have to keep cutting it back. But do watch and see if there's some other stressor in the top of the tree that is causing the tree to feel like it needs to branch out lower on the trunk.
Right. I agree with that. So yeah, definitely some type of stress. Yeah, because it's trying to produce limbs. Yeah. So something is going on with the tree.
But trees do have epicormic growth, and you cut them off, but they usually don't grow back for a while.
Yeah.
In a normal, healthy tree.
Right.
So that's why I'm worried that there's some kind of stress going on if it keeps coming back, and he has to keep cutting it.
Right. So there you have it, Alejandro. Yeah, just keep cutting back.
Keep cutting it back.
Yeah, and assess the overall health of the tree.
Yeah, and you can always call somebody,
All right,
an
certified
arborist
arborist.
out,
Yeah,
and see if there's something else going on with the tree that he needs to address.
All right, that's good. All right, thank you, Alejandro. We appreciate that question. Here's our next via email. This one's interesting, right? I've seen the trunks of crepe myrtle trees braided when they were young to look like a tree. Is this good for the tree? And it's Jerry on YouTube. So what do you think about that one? It's pretty interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, braided.
I have not seen that with crepe myrtles. I've seen it with other tropical plants, but I haven't seen it with crepe
Neither.
myrtles. I would not want to get that because you don't know what, unless you actually know what type of crepe myrtle it is and you know it's not going to get big. But most crepe myrtles get to be tree size. And that means the trunk has to expand with it. And that braiding is actually going to girdle itself.
Right, I see.
It'll restrict the growth of each of one of those trunks, and it's not going to grow properly, and you're going to end up with a very sick tree because it's not going to get the nutrients, because all the nutrients are on the entire circle around each trunk that's been braided. And when you cut them off because they keep growing, it's not going to get nutrients to that section of the trunks.
Okay. All right, Jerry. Thank you for that question. Interesting question, though.
It's very interesting.
All right, we appreciate that. Here's our next via email. While weeding my flower bed, I am finding little seashells. Something is living in the shells. They are smaller than a penny. I'm not sure if these things are good or bad. What should I do with them? And this is Sharon from West Tennessee. Well, guess what, Sharon? We appreciate that picture.
I do.
What do you think
That's
that?
it.
What do you think those are?
Those are snails.
It's snail shells, yeah.
Yeah, there's snail shells, and there's probably snails in them.
Yeah.
And they like slugs. They like the same things slugs like. And I kind of put them in the same category with slugs.
Okay.
As being thugs in the garden.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because
All right.
they like to chew on the nice plant material that we would like to see and not have a bunch of holes in them.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, well,
So
they're good or bad?
so
Yeah, they could be bad.
They could be bad.
They could be
Yeah,
bad.
if there's enough of them, it could be bad.
Right.
They
yeah.
like wet, dark conditions.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, so the environment?
Yeah, environment.
Yeah.
But I just, don't necessarily want them to continue to live
Right,
if there's a large
right,
population of them.
right, right.
Because them like the slugs, they put a lot of holes in the plants.
Yeah, they can cause some damage, you know, to your plants that you have out in the landscape. So Sharon, we appreciate that question.
Good
and the picture.
question.
Thank you much. All right, Joel, that was fun.
It
Thank you
was.
much. Appreciate that. All right. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about the plants Joellen planted or about keeping birds away, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have more information about that and everything else we talked about today. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.